Hello, this is Fiona Cuthbertson coming from the pod to record another episode of Off the Cuff. This week we're lucky enough to have Dhruv Patel. Dhruv is the founder of Nisai Learning, which has utilised online and virtual technology as an effective and innovative way of making education accessible to those in and out of school for over 26 years. He's been recognised as a Fellow Doctor of the Royal Institute of Education by the Royal Institute of Singapore and listed in the Financial Times Top 100 BAME Leaders in Technology. Welcome, Dhruv.
Thank you for having me here.
It's a pleasure. So, what motivated you to establish Nisai Learning?
By chance, we had the technology, and at the time, Birmingham City Council wanted a technology to provide teaching for those students who were ill and couldn't go to school. So we had actually an opportunity to help them and support them. So this was very much led by education, and technology followed it.
And why are you so committed to the UN Sustainable Development Goals for 2030?
When you get to a stage like I am at 68, you've got 6 grandchildren. What do you leave them? Lots of money or clean water or clean air and good society. So for me, the SDG 2030 goals are definitely the most important things.
And what is the most important lesson that you've learned in the 28 years of being a chief executive?
I think you've got to lead from the front. You have to believe in your own convictions, your own values and ethics. And I think that if you follow them, your team will follow them, and your passion and comes through when you're talking to the people. But it's at the end of the day, it's about human beings. We're dealing with human beings, progression and equity of what it is all about. So I think firmly believing in it and making sure we fight the cause, because we've got the technologies, we've got the abilities to do it, so we need to make it happen.
Absolutely. And what are the qualities that you look for in the team around you and why?
I think the most important thing for me is their passion to do something which is right. It's the ability to make a difference and make an impact. And all of my team, when they come on board, and I induct them personally to let them know what my values are. But it's interesting that our HR department understands that very strongly, and the people who come in have more or less similar values to the organization. And also that everybody in the organization is really making an impact on people we work with, the children we work with, because a lot of these children do not have the ability to better themselves. So my team is needed, and they really are behind that to make that impact. And
what has been the greatest challenge in building a successful business?
Because we've always been slightly innovative, it's been a bit of an uphill challenge in UK, where before COVID, online education and online learning was never taken seriously. So it is about keeping everybody understanding what blended learning is, what online learning is. From where we sit, it's about making sure our learners get the right kind of provision. And to try to explain that to people who are not there, it's very difficult, but we're getting there slowly.
Indeed. Well, you and I have worked together for quite a while, and one of our early successes was getting online and blended learning into the Children and Families Bill in 2014. But you've worked in the area of online education for almost 3 decades. So what do you think the impact of the pandemic has been on the sector in this time?
I think there were positives and negatives. The positives, I think, were it really made people aware of the power and the value of technology and how it can be effectively used. The negatives were that the technology companies came in and they put the technology there, but did not train the teachers. And what that did, that there were some good practices and bad practices. Those who had the technologies and those parents who could afford another set of laptops, they had the best. Those who couldn't, it made that gap much wider for those have and have nots.
And have you seen a change in the way that both schools and wider society view online learning now?
Well, that's an interesting one, because previous government came out with accreditation OES that was specifically for online schools. But they said that the most important place for a student, a learner, is in the school. Online schools were the last point when the students should go on. Even if you got an OES qualification and certification, it's a second-class learning. And a lot of our students do not go to school right now because they're either anxious, they got multiple issues, they got learning difficulties, they got mental health. And if they can't have access to online education and is considered as a second class, then the parents don't know which ones to choose. And also this thing about schools cannot say now if the child is educated online, is considered as present. Now they're considered as absent, unauthorized absence, which negates the whole thing about that online accreditation.
Absolutely. Again, it does highlight the fact that a lot of special educational needs education is again seen as bolt on as opposed to bolt in. And the children need to be valued. And one of the issues that they have is that they don't feel valued, they don't feel supported. And as we all know, with special educational needs, if a child doesn't feel supported, they're less likely to learn. And that comes on to the fact that Nisai Learning is very much focused on special educational needs students. Do you think there are specific online teaching challenges for these students?
Yes, a lot of our students and learners have been left on the side. So, to bring them back on track takes a long time. And also, one of the things we have as Nisai, don't do it by year groups or years, we do it by abilities. And because we don't have webcams, students, they can be ability level, so they can have a 9 year working with 12 years or 13 years working with 9 years, and nobody knows the difference. So we can be totally inclusive, can provide the same level of equity to all the students. And teachers have to be trained effectively. We don't have more than 15 in a class and they're at the same level. So the teachers have got a lot more to do. And we have also written our own systems at the back end, which allows the teachers to measure the progression of the learners. So everything we've done is to make sure the learning is personalized to the learner.
And you are the only online learning provider to be Section 41 approved to support learners post 16 with special educational needs. Do you see Nisai Learning doing more in this area going forward?
Oh, yes. Post 16 is a very important area for us because the education needs to continue after 16. If you are a 16-year-old or 17-year-old and had 4 years of disrupted education, you're starting at literally a very low base. And you need to get them very quickly up to speed so they can be able to go out to college, be able to go to university, or be able to go to a workplace. And that's important because if you don't have the qualifications, you're not going to be able to get them there. In a normal class, something between 10 to 15%, maybe more, of those students in a class have got some sort of learning disability. Fast forward that in 5, 10 years, if that kind of workforce is not there in the workforce, what's going to happen? How do we pay for it? So this is not just an education piece. This is also important for the Ministry of Finance and to take care of that because we cannot keep on funding that. The Treasury has to think about this as well. So this is a UK PLC problem, not just an education problem.
Yes, and Robert Buckland did a lot of work around autism and the workplace through his Buckland Review. So what do you think is the most important that the government takes from that going forward?
We need to have more awareness in workplace that diversity and neurodiversity is very important and you need to embrace that, but also we should embrace that in education and all the way through the supply chain of future workforce. My concern is that in the government sector is all in silos and they're not thinking the big picture. This group of young people will not be in workplace. So you have to either look at how you're going to fund that, or they might end up in Justice Department or somewhere else. So it's going to cost you a lot more. So it's important that it starts working now. Where you have physical disabilities, you've seen businesses adapted to it. So they put ramps up, they have got people with limited eyesight, hearing, and all that. They've taken care of that. But where there is invisible disability, they haven't taken care of that because they don't understand that. So there is a lot more to be done on that awareness for businesses, adjustments they would need to do. And for example, in our organization, we have a complete diverse staff. We've got neurodiverse, we've got staff with anxiety, and they're very good teachers as well. So we got quite a way of doing things, and it's about how you deal with your staff. So it is about awareness and getting that awareness out.
And over the last 2 years, there have been a great deal of concern about poor attendance in schools and ghost children who are coming off the school roll. So what are your views on this, and are we dealing with it in the right way at the moment?
A lot more students fall through the crack. The only time a local authority tends to pick them up is when they're 16 and above, which is where the issue starts. And by that time, you have to do a lot of work, remedial work, to get them back on track. So it's going to cost you more and more and more. And I think the concern where the schools are off-rolling them, what I call that compelled elective education, I think that's really not right and it's unethical. And to a certain extent, I wonder whether it's legal or not. Off-rolling should not happen. Schools are part of the community and they should take care of their community.
Coming back to your previous point on calling for equity as well as inclusion for young people, what does this mean and what kind of change are you actually asking for?
Inclusive doesn't mean just putting the children in the same classroom with the learning aids. That is not inclusive. You need to give them assistive technology. You need to give them support. Create the same level playing field for everybody. And I don't think that exists right now. Whether it's in primary school or secondary schools or in university, it doesn't exist. And when I do that, when I see in our organization, we see some amazing success coming out for the students.
Talking about change, the Nisai Learning published a manifesto for change in the run-up to the election. And what do you hope is going to change with the new government in office?
Well, I'm hoping that the time taking to put the education healthcare plans in place is reduced because the amount of time it takes and the amount of bureaucratic requirements there are puts the parents under pressure. There is a huge amount of stress on everybody. And again, by the time the student comes back, the learning loss is huge, right? So there's a lot of tracking to be done. So I think that the government should look at that. I think the government should look at these things about where funding is required. The local authorities should ring fence the funding which is for special educational needs. I think them using it for something which is not SEN related or education related, I think that should not happen. And they should also look at innovative ways of doing it instead of paying a lot of money for transferring students and in pre-16 by taxis to out of county provision or something like that, which is going to be more expensive.
Indeed, it was a question from Baroness Ritchie that showed just how much of a differential there was between the supposed notional amount of money given by the government and the amount of money that goes to a child. One of the other things that we talked about within the manifesto was the idea of a child identifying number and a children's plan. Do you think that would help the money to follow the child through their education journey?
Oh, absolutely. I think that there is this theoretical thing which says money should follow the learner. When the school jettisons the kids, money doesn't follow them, and the local authority hasn't got enough funding to provide the necessary support for those young people. So I think if they had the identifier, unique identifier, that would tell which money is identified for which one. So yes, it will be a little bit more administrative, but I think it will make everybody accountable for that learner.
You say on the one hand it might be more of an administrative issue, but we are going through a technical revolution with artificial intelligence at the moment. So what change can we expect to see in education and how it's going to be delivered into the near future?
This is where the technology can come in and they can look at how we can streamline things. Now, for example, educational healthcare plans, every local authority has got a different way of doing educational healthcare plans, which means here you are actually creating barriers for movement of people moving between the local authorities. They have to relearn what the new techniques are. So that way, you're not transferring money, which should go to the children and their education, but you're paying money and costing money on lots of these bureaucratic layers, which shouldn't be there. There's a streamline, and using technology to streamline it, you should be able to do much more.
But it does sound like Nisai Learning really is trailblazing in this area. So where can people go to learn more about you?
Well, they go to our website and they can connect to our people, www.nisai.com, and we'll be gladly able to give you more information on that.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dhruv. And with that, we come to the end of another interview. Supporting our children with special educational needs should not be an afterthought. It should be part of our society, an equitable society. Thank you to the listeners of the podcast. If you have any questions, please feel free to comment. If you think it's worth coming back, please like and subscribe. If you feel you need something to tide you over to the next podcast, please buy my book Party Games on Amazon. And on that note, I'll see you next time. Have a good week, one and all.